Hello, this is Gordon Now, and today I'll be talking about how to practice Motivic Improv, aka Motif Development, a technique where we will work with small musical ideas called motifs to build patterns and create structure and interest in your solos. A motif is usually a very short musical idea, shorter even than what we would call a phrase. For example, if we look at the song All of Me, we could say the first three notes of the song are the first motif. The motif is a quarter note followed by two eighth notes that each jump downwards. And notice that this motif pattern reoccurs in the third bar and the fifth bar, and in many other places throughout the song. In fact, we would call All of Me a relatively motivically based song. Now, if we talk about the phrases, both musical and lyrical in All of Me, sometimes they're the same thing as the motif, but oftentimes they're longer. For example, the first phrase, All of Me, is just the motif, but the second phrase really is, Why not take all of me, which you'll notice is longer than the motif. So that's the difference. Motivic improv is not an all or nothing affair. It's not like we would say a solo either is or is not motivic, but it's more a question of how much you want to use in your solo. So it's like a dial, and if the dial is set to the maximum all the time, it gets boring, but at the same time, if the dial's set to 0 all the time, then you're not using this tool at all, and that's kind of a shame. If you learn how to use Motivic Improv in a balanced way, I guarantee it will make you a better soloist. So, to demonstrate, here are some exaggerated extremes. First, here's a solo we would call heavily motivically based. And in contrast, here's a solo that we would say has very little motivic development. So it's not about saying that one of those solos was fundamentally better than the other, but of course we can talk about preferences and impressions, and maybe with that second solo you got the impression that it was a little unfocused or meandering in comparison to the first one, which hopefully you heard had some interesting structure and patterns, and that was a result of working with that motif, which was... You may have heard that motif being repeated and changed in various ways, like it was sped up, it was slowed down, it was moved higher and lower, it was looped, etc. So if we summarize and organize the various ways of changing motifs, we could talk about these main ones. With melodic variation, we change the pitches but keep the same rhythm of the motif. And we can do this by using the same shape, such as the descending shape of All of Me but moved higher or lower, or we could use the opposite shape, for example changing that to an ascending 3 notes, or we could use a free shape. Rhythmic variation is the opposite, where we keep the same pitches but change the rhythms. Primarily, we can displace them earlier or later, or make them slower or faster. And there are other variation techniques including ornamentation, which is kind of just like decorating your motif. There's fragments, or just taking an even smaller piece of your motif. Or the opposite, extending, where you add new material onto the motif. And of course, there's combining 2 or more of these at the same time. So I'll talk about each one of these in upcoming videos. Today, let's practice melodic variation. So our first step in practicing this will be choosing our musical setting. Now, because we're practicing improv, the most practical thing is to choose a play-along recording of a rhythm section to practice along to. When you're practicing a newer concept or something that's difficult for you, it's a smart idea to choose a simpler musical setting. So for example, a play-along recording at a comfortable tempo of a single chord vamp, like let's say C major 6. If you know the notes in a C major 6 chord and the corresponding scale, then you're all set. you know what you'll be working with to create your melodic variations. If you've played this exercise over a single chord vamp and are feeling pretty comfortable with it, then you might upgrade to a more moderate musical setting, for example, a 2-5-1 vamp in a single key. Now, for this to make sense, you need to know, of course, what a 2-5-1 progression is, what the notes of those chords are, and the corresponding scales. In other words, you want to know those things well enough that you don't have to actively concentrate on them, and instead have your attention free to focus on what you're actually trying to practice, which is the melodic variation. Now, if you've got a solid handle on the concept you're practicing and want to test yourself in a slightly more realistic situation, then you might upgrade to a more complex musical setting of playing on a song form, like All of Me. Again, this only makes sense if you're able to succeed at the exercise and not get too distracted by thinking about the song. Now for this demonstration, I'm going to use the simple musical setting of a C major 6 vamp. And for an example motif, I'm going to start off with that 3-note descending one from All of Me. I'm going to use a pattern of play 1 bar, rest 1 bar. And the rest is important because it gives us time to think about what we've played and also to think about the motif. If you're using a longer motif, of course, you might do play 2 bars, rest 2 bars. Often it's useful to write down a sketch or a little game plan for us to follow as we practice. So here's an example. In this one, we play the original motif in the first bar, rest for a bar, then play a variation, then rest, a second variation, and a third variation, and rest after each, and finally repeat the original motif. For exercise number 1, we're going to practice melodic variation with the same shape. So we're keeping the same rhythm, which is the quarter note followed by 2/8 notes, and the same shape, which is 3 notes jumping down, but we're changing what notes those are by moving them higher or lower. Usually we'll choose notes that we know are in the scale that corresponds to the chord or chords we're playing over. In this case, since I'm playing over C major 6, I will mostly choose notes from the C major scale, aka C Ionian. So for example, from our original motif of we could change it to or. I will add that when I'm doing a practice session with exercises like these, I like to start and end with just a little bit of free improvising. It's a good way to warm up and warm down. Okay, so here's a demonstration of exercise number 1. Alright, now it's time to try it yourself. If you like, you can download this little written out plan for exercise number 1 below. Also, you'll find links to play-along recordings, including one for a single chord vamp. You can start by using this same All of Me motif or choose your own. The most important thing, though, is that you record yourself while you try this. If you're playing along to a YouTube video, a phone recording like a voice memo would be just fine. The thing is, you have to listen back to yourself to see how you did and judge your progress. And it's not about saying that it was a complete success or an utter failure, but it's about asking how successful were you in trying to do what you were practicing. So in this case, did the variations that you play keep the same rhythm and the same shape but have different notes? And when you played the original motif again at the end, did you remember it? Now, if you didn't get everything right, that's okay, and try it again and be patient with yourself. But if you're finding you have trouble after multiple tries, you might just want to double check that you're using a simple enough motif. In other words, really something with only 3 notes, for example, and check that your musical setting is simple enough, like just a single chord vamp. Alright, that's all for today, but tune in next time when I'll continue with melodic variation, starting with the opposite shape, free shape, and more. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and check out the other SacJEF videos, and leave any questions in the comments below. Thanks for listening.